Good morning. You're good. Good morning and welcome to the April 25th meeting of our Quality Assurance Task Force. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I am Nika Berry, the chairperson for the QATF, and I'd like to ask Ms. Marilyn Baldwin if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you're able, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Marilyn. Welcome, everyone. This is my first meeting as the newly elected chair of the QATF, and I am very, very, very excited. I want to thank each and every one of you for just your vote of confidence and for believing that I can actually do this, with a special thank you to Ms. Marilyn Baldwin. You've set an example as the immediate past chairperson, and I am more than honored that you stayed with us so that I can learn a lot more than what I've learned already. You've taught a lot, and I am truly, truly honored to walk in your footsteps. I know that you'll be right here by my side. So thank you again for your service, and Wayne and I will both try to make you proud.
You will.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll have Mrs. Whittington to review the agenda and share any announcements that she may have. Ms. Whittington, you're recognized.
All right, good morning, Quality Assurance Task Force. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. As for the agenda, we are prepared to move forward as it is presented. There are no changes to the agenda, but I want to call attention to an email that I sent out last week announcing Kathy Goldfarb's retirement. Kathy served well with us here for more than 13 years. And she's definitely going to be missed. In fact, I had an opportunity to stop by her home on yesterday to see her, and there was such a look of relief on her face. And I think it had to do with no more quorums and no more polls, no more agendas. But we just want to acknowledge Kathy's service, and we owe a gratitude to her for the work that she did here building the Metro Plan Orlando team. The position that she was in has been advertised, and we will keep you all posted when we have a new person in that position. Mary Ann Horn is serving as our maestro. She's on the virtual side duties this morning, so that's the voice you're going to hear later on. And also next month at your LCB meeting, the May 10th meeting, I will be traveling. We tried to move the meeting a week back, but my absence is not as important as if you all are not here. So we will go on with the meeting. Slade Downs will be seated here and will be assisting you all through that meeting. Lastly, August 29th and 30th is the date of the annual Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged Conference that's going to be held here in Orlando. And if you are interested in attending, please let me know. We usually take with us 2 to 3 volunteers if you are willing to give up the 2 days of your life to participate in that. So it is a commitment of time because there is a registration that is that we will have to pay. So Madam Chair, again, the agenda is we're ready to move forward. The presenters are here, so there is nothing standing in the way of us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, you ready?
I'll ask all committee members to say here or present when your name is called. Baldwin. Berry.
Present.
Delano. Jennings. Nelia. Olson. Stone.
Present.
Zabritsky.
Here.
Madam Chair, we do have a quorum physically present.
Thank you for that. It's now time for our public comments on action items. This completes roll call, and it's now time for public comments. This is our first of 2 opportunities for the public comments. Public comments on action items are heard before action is taken at the beginning of the meeting, and comments that are more general can be heard at the end of the meeting. Comments may be made in person or online by those joining us via Zoom. People wishing to comment on action items in person must complete a speaker's introduction card, and each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Members of the public joining us virtually who wish to speak will use the raised hand feature on the Zoom screen. If you're attending by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, a team member will unmute your microphone and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. Ms. Mary Ann, is there anyone online wishing to comment on the action item?
Madam Chair, we have no hands raised online at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Lisa, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in person?
I have not received any requests.
Thank you. Public comments may also be submitted by email or phone message before the meeting. Were any submitted by email or phone?
Madam Chair, we have not received any by email or phone.
Thank you for that. Very well. We will now move on to our first action item. Our presenter this morning is Ms. Trish Witten with Links, who will be presenting the draft of the TDSP. Ms. Witten?
Sorry. Good morning. I am Trish Witten, Senior Planner at Lynx. I'll be going over the Transportation Disadvantage Service Plan Major Update. I also have with me our consultant, Ryan Suarez from Kimley Horn. They developed the plan in coordination with Lynx and Metro Plan Orlando. So I know you've heard this several times. So what is the TDSP? I'll go quickly through this. There are 3 sections to the TDSP. This year is our major update that's required every 5 years. And it is a requirement of the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. It is due by July 1st for funding. So the first section of the development plan, this kind of outlines where are we now, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there? So we do public participation, look at demographics, and then that feeds into the needs, barriers to coordination, goals, objectives, and implementation plan. The second section is the service plan. And this section outlines how are we operating now, eligibility requirements, service standards, time of day, hours, as well as policies, procedures. And then in this section is also the rate structure justification. And that is due annually to the CTD as well. And I believe Norm will be presenting that next. And the third section is quality assurance. This section outlines how the CTC is evaluated at the local level, as well as any findings from recent evaluations. So this year, there were no changes made to this section because this year was a redesignation of Lynx as the CTC with a new memorandum of agreement. So there's no evaluation done in that year. So what we did was just note that in the previous year, there were no findings in need of any corrective actions. So some of the major changes in this plan, and I'll go into that in the next slides, but just to give an overview is the public outreach section. We also looked at TD population forecasts using updated data. We completed a new needs assessment and barriers to coordination. And then with that, we updated our goals, objectives, strategies, implementation schedule. There were a couple changes to the service standards, which we'll go over, and then the rates. So the first section, the public outreach, I was here, I think at the October meeting, asking for your input on stakeholders and possible locations. So you have a lot of great input. We had a huge list of agencies to invite. And our consultant, they called over 400 passengers and they got 87 surveys completed with our TD passengers over the telephone. We also had 2 discussion group workshops, one in the morning, some of you were there, and one in the afternoon where we got some great input. We did have 3 public workshops, and I'm sad to report that they were not well attended. We did have in-person and virtual options, but for some reason, we just didn't get great attendance. We advertised them on the vehicles, social media, website, newspaper. But so what we did was we looked back on the November public workshop that was conducted here at MetroPlan, because there were a lot of comments at that workshop. So we took those comments and we kind of compared it to the other things that we've heard, and there was a lot of consistency between the comments. So that was our basis. So from the survey, what we heard was the passengers are using the vehicle, taking trips 3 to 5 times per week. Most of them are paying cash, and most of them are reserving over the telephone. The majority of trips are for medical purposes. Overall satisfaction with Lynx was around an 8, and about 4.5 that people were very satisfied, around a 4.5 with the vehicle, the cleanliness, the driver. We heard more around 3.5 as far as wait time, call hold time, length of time on the vehicle. And that was consistent with what we heard in the surveys in the discussion groups too. So these are some of the key items, kind of some of the key findings that we heard throughout. So they're listed here, length of time on the vehicle, call hold time. We heard a lot about the reservation system needing some improvements for the visually impaired, that is not really that user-friendly when trying to make reservations. Map updates, we heard a lot. And also passengers would like some other fare payment options besides cash or prepaid or the PAW Pass. So we were happy to hear after we collected all this data that maps had been updated consistent with our outreach, as well as the new phone system was put in place in February. So we hope that next year when we do this, we'll hear good things. In the service analysis section, we updated the TD forecasts, and that is showing about a 13% increase in the critical TD trips by 2028, based on the methodology from the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. We also looked at demographics, and they continue to increase as they have every year that have come here. We have about a 30% increase in population in Orange County. I think it was over 50% in Osceola, and it's projected around 16% in Seminole by 2040. So we compiled all of our data into the needs assessment, and these are some of the key findings that came out. There's going to be increased demand. We can benefit from expanded services throughout the service area. Customers would like more technology, and we need more vehicles. The barriers to coordination, they continue to be the same year over year. Funding, we need funding to implement these things. And the development patterns that we see in our region are sometimes not great for TD passengers in the rural areas and providing those transportation services. We heard a lot about wanting technology, but that the technology needs to be easy to use. So with that, we developed our goals and objectives. We reviewed our goals from the last plan, and they were still relevant for this plan. So we retained most of the goals, I think, except for goal 4 have been accomplished. So we replaced goal 4. But what we did was we went into each of the goals and we added some new objectives and strategies to address what we heard. So for goal 1, that one had previously focused on travel training. So we kept that, but we added an objective to look at travel training on our neighbor link services, and possibly where we could benefit from some new neighbor link zones in areas maybe with higher TD populations. Goal number 2, we retained looking at community events and where we can attend events, but we also added some outreach on the customer facing technologies that we have so that we can kind of help passengers understand how to use what's out there. Goal 3, we kept that one had focused previously on customer complaint time and measuring, I think it's a 14-day window. We kept that in there, but we went ahead and added some new objectives to also look at call hold time, mapping updates to make sure that those are occurring, as well as fare payment options. Goal 4, this is the one we replaced. I think it previously focused on standardizing service standards, something that we have already accomplished. So we added program, administrative, and service delivery efficiency. And basically this one focuses on continuing to look at the tools that are available as we update these plans, which are required every year. And then goal 5, we left as it is. This goal is coordination between the links departments to make sure that when we get TD requests, that they're going through our service planning department and that we're looking at them in future service planning efforts. So we left that one alone. And then the goals, the implementation plan is derived from our goals and objectives. So there are more than what is listed here, but it basically gives us the option to identify actions, departments that would be responsible, and put timeframes to those actions so that each year when we come back with our annual update, we can look at our progress towards achieving our goals. So we just pulled out a few here. And like I had already mentioned, the map updates, that was the one that we heard a lot in public outreach, and that had been done in February 2023. So that was really great to hear that, as well as the new phone system, which I think is helping a lot, and that was implemented in February 2023. So there are more in the plan, and I think that the plan is online for review if you want to look at them. But here are this is just a few. We heard that passengers would like to be able to make TD reservations before the 24-hour window. So we included in here to review that policy with this task force and see if we can make any changes. Currently, I believe it's 24 hours is the earliest they can reserve their trips. So maybe that could help with call hold times if that was made consistent with the ADA policy. Continuing those map upgrades to the system so that we can reduce the time of travel on the vehicle when the maps are correct. And then looking at the text messaging capabilities and other ways to reduce call hold time and the need to call into the customer service center, as well as looking at the current reservation system and how can we upgrade that to make it more user-friendly for the visually impaired to book trips, and then providing education on how to do that. And then we also added beginning those discussions with our ITS department and vendors on what other fare payment options might be available to our customers so that we can start looking at that. And I do want to note that in our public outreach process, we heard a lot of great suggestions. Some of them would require funding or policy changes. So we did include them in our appendix and our report. They're not listed here, but we didn't want them to just be forgotten about. We want them to be included. So they are in the report for future consideration, and we've noted what would be required. And then we looked at the service standards to make sure that what we're reporting is consistent with what's currently being done. And there are two service standards that the language was removed because this is not how it's currently being reported. And I put this on here so you can see for call hold time, 90% of the hourly time. So it's to be achieved 90% of the hourly time periods that a phone line is in operation measured monthly. And that is not currently how it's currently an average daily call hold time. So we removed that sentence. And then under public transit ridership, it was to refer at a minimum 10% of individuals applying for service to fixed route service. And we remove that because we just don't think that that's, well, it's not what's being done. And it's just, we refer based on the eligibility process for those that are able to, and it's an appropriate mode to refer them to fixed route, not just based on the percentage. So that language was also removed. And then that leads us to our next steps. So based on a recommendation from this task force, we would go to the TDLCB in May for approval to submit the plan to the CTD before July 1st. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't know if it's a question as much as a statement. When it comes to setting up trips, call me old, call me, untrusting of electronics. I check my rides to see when the driver is coming to my location. So I'm always ready when he pulls down my street. But when it comes to changing rides or setting up rides, doing it through the phone versus calling reservations and setting it up that way, I'm always going to go with the latter because it's that voice, it's that name, it's that reviewing back to me. Maybe it's my insecurity that I'm going to screw up and set up a ride incorrectly. Maybe there's an opportunity to hit people of my age group to say, hey, this is safe. Hey, this isn't as difficult or as intimidating as you might think. And that might alleviate some of the wait times from time to time. Just
Yeah, that's a great
my
comment. And
opinion.
that's part of the education that we want to do is to start explaining how to use it and encourage passengers to use it. And we know it won't always be used if it's, you want to make sure you're going to call in, but if we could have more passengers use it, that would be helpful.
I have patients that are teenagers and 20 somethings that grew up with phones and they don't hesitate. You know, and they make their therapy appointments and their doctor's appointments and get there. But for me, it's, yeah, be it that I'm gonna screw up and miss an important meeting. You know,
I understand. I do that too.
Thank you, Ms.
Yeah.
Whitten. Are there any other
Thank you.
questions for Ms. Whitten?
Madam Chair, if I can make a couple of observations and ask one question.
Mhm.
Tricia called attention to the new phone system. Marilyn, Betsy and I went over it in February and had an overview presentation of that phone system. And let me tell you, it was super impressive. And to be able to see that kind of reassured us that there will be some improvement with regard to call hold time. I'm gonna leave the rest up to these two ladies who went along with me, but it was very, very encouraging. But that being said, you removed the sentence having to do with the measurement of call hold time, the 3 minutes. Did we replace that with anything? How will we measure the effectiveness of the phone system if we're not measuring like how calls are being resolved?
We're still measuring the 3 minutes, but daily it had some language about 90% on the line monthly. I'll turn to Norm for any additional information on how it's measured.
Yeah, we've been reporting averages of all the calls that come in on a monthly basis and how we perform to that. So that's what we just tried to align that language to how we've been reporting in the past and been very consistent with.
Okay, I think I wasn't clear on removal of language without something being replaced or that, I think
No,
that's what.
we're still withholding, we're still holding to that 3 minutes. It's
Okay.
just-
It was a lengthier paragraph where it said that we measure 3 minutes and then it had the additional for every 90%. So we don't do that. So we took that out, but it still says measure 3 minutes.
Okay. Great. I think that was it. Oh, and then when we're looking at the fair payment options, something occurred to me as we're looking at it and seeing what those options are. Could we also determine whether EBT cards could possibly be used? If someone is, on public assistance and they have that Visa card, maybe that's one where they would be able to use that if they get cash benefits.
That is certainly a possibility. It's been done in many different transit agencies across the country, so it's no reason why we can't. They're gonna do the upgrade first on fixed route with the new fare boxes, and then the next phase comes in for us to address, because we don't have fare boxes in our vehicles, so we have to have another methodology that you can tap that card or insert it and it can read, whether it be a Visa, MasterCard, or EBT card.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Any other questions? Ms. Marilyn, you recognize.
Called, can you all hear me?
Yes.
we
Okay.
can.
When I called yesterday, to make the reservation for today, the first time after the announcement said, wait, it was just total silence. It was nothing, no music, no continuous message. So I wasn't real comfortable with that. So I hung up and tried it again. And the second time it was better. Any reason why the first time the customer may have had the impression that no one was there or they weren't in the queue or anything? It said that, your waiting time was more than 10 minutes. But there was never an update.
No, I'm not aware of any, problems that we had yesterday, but let me go look
Maybe
into
it
it.
was just a glitch.
Miss Marilyn, let me go look into it and find out. I don't know if it was a glitch. I don't know if it's a particular line. I don't, there's multiple lines that come in and the
Right.
recordings are supposed to play, but let me look at that and I'll get back with you.
But other than that, very good.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions? I do have a question. You said that you received several suggestions for the smart fare. Like what were some, it's along the lines of what Ms. Whittington had, but what were some of those suggestions? Do you remember?
Credit cards, smart cards. There was a suggestion, which we included this one, to add paw pass numbers to all accounts so that Customers don't have to call in to get set up for the pop house, but that it's just already in there. So we did include that in the implementation plan. But as far as the smart cards, we didn't really go into a lot of details other than credit cards or some way to pay, other than having to do cash or prepaid.
Okay. And then I had another question. It was regarding the second removal on the service plan with the neighborhood. Can you just, I can't remember it.
On the
I-
service standards.
Yes, service standards, I meant, yes.
This one.
Remove, refer at a minimum 10%. Can you explain that again for me, please?
Yes, we have a service standard for public transit ridership, and it states that we'll do our eligibility screening process, and as appropriate, we would refer that customer to fixed route if they're able to use the fixed route. But then under that, there was a sentence saying that we will refer at a minimum 10% of individuals applying for service to fixed route. And we just didn't feel like a percentage is what we do, because we don't just, if you can't use it, we're not going to refer just to meet that service standard. So we removed it. And then as we do the eligibility screening, if that person seems like they can use fixed route and they're near a fixed route, then they would be referred. But we don't measure just to make sure that we get 10% or greater.
Okay. So is there a measurement? That's what I thought you said. Is there a measurement? So even though they have to be eligible, are you measuring a percentage of those who are referred, those who are eligible being referred? Are you measuring that?
Are we counting how many,
Yeah.
like, are we the ones that go?
The current program that we have is the Access Plus Plus card, and that's only for ADA. And that's something that we could look at expanding to TD in the future. But in most cases, if somebody cannot ride the fixed route, it's hard to refer them over to that. And then you really want to know what that quantitative, how to measure it on a day-to-day basis. You could tell raw numbers, how many maybe applied for the card, but you couldn't tell versus how many applicants that applied. So it'd be very difficult to do and try to make it really apples to oranges, if you will.
I think I have it now. Thank you for that. All right, are there any other questions? Seeing none, we need a motion for this one. Okay. All right, so we need a motion to accept.
I move that we accept the TDSP as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed may do the same. Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ms. Whitten. Mr. Norm Hickling is our next presenter for the next two items and will first receive your presentation of the annual rate calculation worksheet. Mr. Hickling?
Very simple. Calculations, we bring this to you every year. Our finance department are the ones that go through and really crunch the numbers. They have to look at, based on the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage, they have a huge worksheet that they have to follow. It's a very complicated, and because it's complicated, they don't have me do it. So, but this is what they produced. And I'm thankful because it's complicated in that regard. But this is what they produced, is actually a little lower per trip cost that will be charged back to the CTD per trips for TD going into the FY 23-24 period of time. You can see it's a 0.01% and downward. So, and really has to do with, based on what finance told us, that it really comes in as we're forecasting what the new contract that's being on Thursday that will be executed with TransDev services. The trip rates are quite a bit different. And so it's reflected here in these trip rates. So with that, take any questions and for your consideration. So it's good news in
And
that
Madam,
sense.
Madam Chair, at tab 2 is that complicated worksheet for your review, and this has been sent up to Tallahassee as was required, and we got back the authorization to bring this forward to Quality Assurance Task Force and the LCB for approval. It's already been reviewed by Tallahassee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hickling. Are there any questions for Mr. Hickling regarding the 23-24 rates? All right, seeing none, this requires a motion. May I have a motion to accept?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed may do the same. The motion passes. Mr. Hickling?
Very good. So we'll move on to the quarterly CTC report. And I'm glad to say that there is a lot going on. And so I'll provide you a little overview of what's going on as we have in the past. Just a picture of what our demand is for trips, which is continuing to go up. Performance in delivering those trips and customer service activity. Go through some of the challenges that we are now facing and some of the topics of interest as we move forward that will impact links and access links in this committee and also the TDLCB. So it's interesting times to be a part of this program. I'll say that. I'll show you here in just a minute. Trips continue to go up, strong demand. We are now seeing we're well over 2,000 trips every single weekday. And on the Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, which are our strong days, we're getting very close to 2,500 trips per day. So it's getting very, very close to those pre-COVID levels, that time frame when we didn't even know what COVID was. And so it's come back with an abandon. Call center continues to have a lot of calls coming in. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments. But I really do want to stress that I really appreciate the team and how they handle these calls. They're answering more calls than they have in the past, but they're doing it with professionalism. They're doing it with caring and kindness. And so I appreciate, Robert, what you were saying a little while ago. Most people, they want to talk to somebody. They want to get their reservation done with a friendly voice on the other end of the phone. So big challenge that we have, and we'll talk a little bit about that, is the paratransit vehicle availability. We're still waiting for FDOT at the state level to complete their contract review so that we can start looking at the possibility of purchasing some new vehicles. We have quite a few that we need to. And then we are in the midst of our service provider transition, which I'll talk a little bit about. And that's why our hair is on fire right now. As far as our trip demand, you can see in comparing to 2022, we're up about 23,000 trips for the same period, first quarter of this year. We're really strong, and you can see each quarter or each month that the trips are going up, and we're still expecting very strong trip demand here in the month of April. So we expect that number to keep going up. On-time performance, our goal is 90%. Continue to struggle just a little bit with that. In March, we were at 85%, trying different things to try to get that number up. And quite frankly, this is where that 85%, while it sounds maybe like 5-6% below our goal, really is the generation of most of our calls that come in. 40% of our calls that come in are for ETA, which is estimated time of arrival. Folks start getting nervous, and rightly so. And they've waited 20-25 minutes. They don't see the vehicle coming. They don't know when it's going to be there, and so they start calling. And so obviously we're trying to answer that question, but it also means the person that's trying to make a reservation is on hold. So it is a big domino effect. So if we can get this with the new service provider above the 90% and get it closer to 95%, a lot of those ETA phone calls we anticipate will start to reduce. So.
Situation where educating on using the app will say, oh, all right, my ride's going to be here and give or take 10 minutes. I don't need to make that call. I personally feel safer looking at that and saying, okay, I'm going to start packing up and closing up my office and heading out versus setting up a ride. So again, maybe an opportunity to advertise. Don't call us, look at the app,
And
know,
we agree.
in
And
a
that's what we
nicer
got.
sense.
We need to do it. We're going to do a much better job of doing customer outreach and training this coming year. And we're getting back out to the community and doing those kind of things, Robert, just exactly what you're describing. And but again, there is most people like my mom. I'll use her as an example, is she's going to call and she wants to talk to somebody. So, you know, that's fine with electronics, but I'm going to talk to somebody. Somebody is going to talking with somebody is more truthful and verifiable in her mind. Just, and I think most people that are on our service are that same way. So understand it completely. And Miss Marilyn agrees with my mom. So there's 2 votes right there. So the average speed of answer for the phone calls in the customer service world was just a little bit over our goal at 3 minutes and 13 seconds for March of 23. Number of calls per agent was 58, which is still pretty high. That's a lot of calls that you're dealing with each day. And that's when I say I'm really proud of the team. They do a great job. Total calls in March was 57,554. And we did 86%, it's a little over 86% of all calls that came in, we were able to answer. And that's something that we've been stressing a lot with the team, is to answer those phone calls. And sometimes you're not going to get to everyone. People drop off, they go through a bad cell area, they have to rush and they have to hang up. So, you know, you don't get every single call, but 86% of the calls coming in, I think is something we want to watch and try to maintain that going forward. So it's a much better sign than only answering 80% of the calls. And we talked about vehicle replacements. We've been talking about this probably for 18 months now. State still hasn't finalized their contract. We were hoping that we were going to have that finalized in March, which then means we can go then have a list of vehicles that have been approved that we can go procure. We also know that once we put that purchase order in to procure a vehicle, what we're hearing is could be anywhere up to 18 months before we actually see that vehicle for revenue service. So we got an aging fleet. It takes a lot to maintain them. They're running about 30,000 miles, maybe a little bit more each month. When you run a vehicle that hard, there's a lot of things that can go wrong and break. And we have a lot of vehicles, quite frankly, that we need to replace, especially if anybody's had the opportunity to ride in one of the minivans. It's not the most accommodating and or spacious vehicle in the whole wide world, and it really does limit our ability to schedule trips throughout our system. Eligibility processing, we are constantly looking at how to speed that process up. Got a good team in place that is working very hard. They have a 21-day period that have to make a determination for eligibility, and we hold that for both the TD and the ADA. That's a ADA regulatory requirement, but we hold it for the TD also. But again, it's a lot of work, a lot of phone calls come in, a lot of time have to be processing. And again, this is an area we talk about customer training. This is an area we can hopefully approach a little bit, because too many of the applications that come in are incomplete. It's like, oh, did you really need my medical professional to sign it? Oh, did you really need that information? Unfortunately, we do need that information. And so when you go back on one application 2 and 3 and 4 times, it really does make the processing a little slower than it could be. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can make that that knowledge out there a little bit better, explain that a little bit clearer, and then hopefully speed up that processing. We are in the
What I'm seeing, usually the applicants are getting the letter, you know, within 2 weeks.
Team's doing a real good job, and I appreciate you saying that. So, but you know, they're always fighting up against that deadline. So it's just, we don't if one person gets sick for a couple of days or has, you know, they have to take care of a child and everything, it really does impact the rest of the team. So we've added a new member, but it still doesn't make it any less stressful for them, but they're doing a great job. And then the real stress is the transition to the new existing service provider. The board at the last month's, March 23rd meeting, they agreed to start the negotiation process with Transdev Services, Inc. They will be our new service provider. We had anticipated a much longer transition period. However, that transition period now has to be done by June 1st. By that time, Transdev will be 100% responsible for doing all the operations on the paratransit services with our oversight. So we are in a very expedited process right now to get them oriented, get them set up, get them ready to go. And it's an all hands on deck type situation. Every department within Lynx is actively engaged. We're having daily meetings, not only with ourselves, but with the team at Transdev. So more to follow, but it's fast and furious to say the least. But Transdev, to their credit, they say they can get it done, and we're going to make sure that they can and be successful and make sure our customers are well taken care of. So some topics of interest. We got the CTC agreement execution that's coming forth. CTD funding, a little bit disappointed. The first draft information we got seems like they're taking a little bit more money away from us. So in the trip and equipment grant, so we're watching that legislative process very carefully to see what kind of impact that's going to be. As we talked about the new map upgrades, we've heard that complaint many, many times. And we are on a process now where we're going to upgrade that map on an annual basis. In the past, it's been done, and then it would go 3, 4, 5 years before it was upgraded again. But we are changing so fast here in Central Florida that we must have it done at least on an annual basis. And we might get to a situation where we even have to do it on do it twice a year. So that's coming. And then we're actively out there doing community outreach, which you all have talked about a little bit here prior. We went out the other day to the Sunshine Ladies out at Ventura Country Club. I was mad at them because it was right in the middle of a golf course. They didn't invite me with a tea time, and they made it very clear that I couldn't just walk on. So, but we did the presentation anyways, disregarding our humble disappointment that we couldn't tell our bosses that we were going to be a couple more hours late. But I know, terrible, but we had a good time with them, and it was educational. They got a lot of great questions, and hopefully we helped them out a little bit. So they said they're going to invite us back. So obviously that's a good sign. So with that, I'd be glad to entertain any questions you might have, comments, concerns, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Hickling. Any questions?
I have one. I brought it up, Norm, before we started the meeting. I know you said earlier, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are your tough days. I've had more than a few instances where my office is just directly south of here. I'll get in a vehicle, and if it's a veteran driver, they'll say, "You're not going to like this," before I even get on. If it's a newer driver, I'll get on, and then I'll notice that they're pulling onto I-4 going west. And we've gone to Disney, we've gone to Universal. One instance, I went out to Good Homes Road, and then we're going back to the east side. I live on the east side of Winter Park. On these days that are really bad, there are a lot of vehicles out there. I don't know if the dispatchers are just overwhelmed and kind of give up, or there aren't enough fingers to put in the holes in the dike. But it seems to me that that's an inefficiency that would make those bad days worse.
Well, there's a couple things that are going on there. First, the vehicles is a large part of that problem. The vehicle mix that we have, it's easy to say we got 184 vehicles, but not all those vehicles are equal in their capacity. You have approximately 46 vehicles out there that are those minivans. They'll carry one person in a wheelchair maybe a PCA, or two people that are ambulatory, two of them be on there versus 10 on a turtle top bus. They have reached their useful life. We want to get them out of there as quickly as possible. In fact, as our capital budget going into this next fiscal year at Lynx is we want to get rid of all 46 of them and replace them with much larger buses. So we have a lot more options so that we don't have to do that. That causes a lot of scheduling problems. It's just unbelievable because you're so limited as to how many people in a single area that you can pick up. The next thing is, yes, with the new service provider, we will be addressing this whole scheduling process. We've heard it from you. We've heard it from Miss Marilyn. We've heard it from other folks many, many times that why am I on a 5-minute trip? I'm going all the way to Disney Springs and then coming back for a 45-minute trip when it could have been 5-10 minutes. We've heard that. I'm not going to just cast stones up here at this podium, but it is a major topic of discussion with our new service provider on how to not do that type of thing and make it much more efficient for both our operators, our customers, and the whole service as a whole.
Because I've always said, pick up and drop off 10 people between my office and my home, as long as they're going in the right direction.
Right.
It's a share ride system. I understand that. But it just seems like going twice the distance in the opposite direction.
And you're right.
To then go back.
And again, with the aging fleet, on any given day, we'll have 25 to 26 vehicles out there that are just out of service because they have something, engine, fuel pump, alternator, whatever the case may be. So that, again, shrinks that size. And again, if you just look at raw numbers, it sounds like you got a lot of vehicles, but you got to look at the capabilities too. So, if you had 46 vehicles that can only carry 2 people, that's what, 100 folks that you can carry at any one time. But if you had 10 people or 10 seats on those, now you're talking 460 people that you could carry within that same period of time, driving from point A to point B. So you can just see the whole routing, even with the dialysis, then you could start setting up routes and taking care of the dialysis customers and clients on a much more consistent basis. We just don't have that yet. We have that vision. We know what we want to get to. We just can't order the vehicles yet. So that's why my hair is not going to grow back.
Thank you. Miss Marilyn, you had a question?
Comment more so than a question. Norm, when you know something like when the new provider was brought to the Lynx board, those of us that are on this board and individuals that are advocates in the disability community would like to know that information so that we could attend those meetings if possible. In other words, those of us who are advocates want to be involved as much as possible. And the other thought that I've heard from our disability community is that when they go online, it's very hard for them to locate access links when they go on Go Links. So maybe we could look at making that a little easier.
Sure. We'll talk to our marketing and communication folks about that very thing. I will tell you the board meeting's at 1 o'clock this coming Thursday. So if you'd like to be there, and the TransDev contract will definitely be agenda item.
You said this coming Thursday
Yes.
at 1?
Yes. At 1
And
o'clock.
what's going to happen then?
That is
Can't hear you.
that is the execution of the TransDev contract, hopefully.
Okay. How long would you anticipate this meeting being? An hour?
At the most.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I have a question, if there are no other questions. For the aging fleet, is there a plan B? So, because you said you're not, so what if things just start happening with the vehicles? Like, is there a plan B, or it's a wait game?
Now, the plan B is what the new service provider, they will have under this contract, the
Mhm.
ability to go lease vehicles and bring them in.
Okay,
Okay. And they'll also be able to use subcontractors for both ambulatory and taxi and TNCs for and companies that can provide wheelchair service too. So,
okay,
but no, under this contract, we made it very clear that, should the demand require it, they could go out and lease vehicles for a period of time to get over that demand to meet our trip requirements.
okay,
We're very much limited. We have to go through a Buy America process. So we either have to go through an RFP process, which can take, as Barry, it can take a year to 18 months. And you get the proposals and you go through a selection process, et cetera. You still have to be, if they're grant funded, they still have to meet the Buy America requirements.
okay.
It's much easier to wait for like a state contract like FDOT's going through right now. They've done all that work.
Mhm.
So now when you just pick from their list as to the vehicle that best meets your needs, then you are dealing directly with that manufacturer, but it's already gone through the Buy America qualifications. It's gone through all the things that are necessary before you can make that order.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's definitely clears it up. Now, and I have one more question. So is June 1st for the transition? Is that a hard stop?
It's a hard date now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, you can. Rob.
Information to the drivers. It has been a topic for me. I know we spoke, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago. Drivers come up to me, I'm sure they come up to Miss Baldwin as well and say, what do you know? Do I have to look for another job, this and that? And it's always, after we spoke, I always tell the drivers, I said, I think you're safe. I mean, this doesn't run without drivers,
Correct.
So I was like, if anyone seems to be safe, and I'm just looking at it, as a lay person at this business model, and what I know of it, that if there aren't drivers, nothing works for Access Links.
Correct.
So
Yes.
I say to them, as long as you have a good driving record and you enjoy what you're doing, I think there's a position for you. Someone may want to say that to
And we have.
the drivers. Yeah,
That's a great question. Just to answer that question just as much as I can. There has been great communication between Transdev and the current Teamsters Union that represent the operators. That communication is going out to the operators all the time. Transdev wants to transition as many and hire as many of those operators that are currently working for MBE Transportation today and hire them over for their services under the Transdev contract. Many of the staff are going to transition too, so they already know. So a lot of that knowledge that has been gained over the last years is going to just go with Transdev and transition to them. So yes, the drivers, if they are interested in continuing to drive paratransit vehicles, they need to get, there's the little QR code on the flyers that we've put out. We've put posters up. They're going to be having job fairs. So yes, they're going to be well taken care of if they so desire. And they got a good track record and they provide a good customer service, and Transdev's going to want them.
what can we do then if someone hasn't heard, if someone hasn't listened? Because a lot of times in communication.
Yeah, I would
there's what's
recommend
said
that
and-
they
and
contact their
what's
union,
heard.
get with their union shop would probably
Okay.
be, that's their bargaining representatives. And I think that's the best
That's
place
the
I
best way to
would
go?
point them to right now. Yes.
And sir, you said your paratransit operators are represented by the Teamsters Union,
Yes.
all of them?
Mhm.
Okay.
And the dispatchers too, I believe also. Yeah. Scheduling folks.
Okay.
Okay.
So just to piggyback off of what we're talking about. So you said a job fair, but for those who are currently employed, they would have to participate in the job would it be a transition for them, or they would need to
Oh,
apply?
they'd
and
have to
then be-
apply. So yeah, And most likely, I mean, we talked yesterday, looks like the union is going to offer their hall, at least that's what we heard, so. But that's between the union and Transdev. They'll find a place that's really convenient for everybody so that they can go and do a one-shop hiring and do their drug testing and do all the things that they have to do to start the orientation process and make that transition. So yeah, they will stop being at one point, they'll stop being an MB employee and they'll become a Transdev employee. So there's that processing that would have to happen.
Thank you for that. So May is gonna be a busy month. Any other
Yes.
questions? Oh,
Ms.
Ms.
Marilyn.
Marilyn?
Norm, is there going to be a time, maybe you said June 1st is their go date? Can they come, the trans development folks, and talk during our May meeting?
I think so. I mean, I know they're just now getting here on site. So I would think that would be doable, that we can
I
bring them
think
up
that would be very
as part of my
helpful
presentation.
to the disability community and to this board, to
Okay,
the full board.
okay. I can certainly ask them. I mean, they say they want to reach out to the community and be, strong partners with the community. That was part of their proposal. So we'll take them up on that offer.
And Madam Chair, we were gonna talk with Norm about having that done later because we had a later transition date. But since that date has been moved up, if they are able to come in May, we will certainly have that invitation open to them. And if not, we'll do it a little bit later, maybe at your August meeting, but certainly at the November workshop where we will have more of the public participation. So it may be a twofer, maybe early in May or the August timeframe, but certainly in November.
Miss Virginia, I didn't hear you. You're saying you will try for
Yes,
May, but it might be later?
we will try for May, which is only like 2 weeks, a week or two away from now. So we will try, and with them being under the gun right now, we will try. If that doesn't work, we'll invite them in August. If that doesn't work, we will certainly have them in November. I'll get back with you, Marilyn.
Thank you for that information. Any other questions for Mr. Hickman?
I have a
Oh, one
question.
more.
Yeah, this new contractor, Transdev, are there requirements for drivers different than what the previous one had, MV?
They're going to be very similar because they have to meet all the regulatory requirements, through FDOT and through the FTA at the federal level. So they're very, very similar. The drug and alcohol is all the same. So, the folks have been doing a good job for MB and working out there and taking good care of our clients. They'll be able to do the same thing for Transdev.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marilyn,
Thank
is,
you, Norm.
Cheryl
Any other
still on?
question? All right, Norm, you're out of the hot seat.
And
Thank you
Ms.
for that.
Berry, if you can, Cheryl Stone is still online, so if we can acknowledge and see if she might have any questions. I don't think that she raised her hand or anything. We do
Can she
wanna
hear?
make-
Sure. Ms. Stone, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I have been listening to this. I'm trying to figure out how Lynx is going to let the ridership and the community know about this transition. Having been a part of the community for all my life, but in the transportation issue for over 20 years, we've had changes like this. And to people who aren't tightly tuned into the nuances of what it involves for a transition like this, your average rider is going to instantly feel that this is going to affect them personally, and how Lynx is going to mitigate any issues. So I'm wondering if Lynx is going to, because it's out in the community. It was out in the community before most of us on the board knew, actually. And what is Lynx going to do to assuage that anxiety that your average rider might have because of the transition that's going on and going on so quickly?
It's a great question. And again, everything has to be finalized on Thursday. That's when the board will vote to execute the contract. That really is, you can't get ahead of that, obviously, and start announcing it to the public too soon. Until the board makes that final decision and they accept the contract and all the negotiations that have been authorized last month, in very goodwill. I am sure our marketing and communications team will be putting out press releases and social media blasts, et cetera, as to the new partnership between Lynx and Transdev Services, Inc. And performing the paratransit. So hopefully we'll be able to answer all those questions and get the word out there as much as we possibly can. And then if there's places we can go and talk, and we can afford that time to go and talk to a community group or a specialized group, then we'd be more than happy to, just to kind of explain how that transition is going. Although a lot of time is going to be taken up in trying to make this transition work and get everything set up for June 1.
If you, this is Cheryl again, if you could please involve those of us on this board so that we can support this whole issue and support Lynx and Transdev, so that the people that we associate with in the community of people with disabilities and other issues that use the system, we can also have a voice that supports the message that you're need to get out to the riders, because we run into these people, we ride with these people, we have lunch with these people, and they look at us as a contact of people that they know, friends in the community, and we want to give them the correct information and basically not look stupid. So that would be very helpful.
And I appreciate that. And what we could do is, you know, the first thing I say is 1 o'clock on Thursday of this week is the board meeting. So I know they have a link that you can tune in and watch
Yes.
or listen. And so I would say that's the first step. And then you will, you know, the press release notices, those kind of things that come out, we can make sure that, you know, I can get those to Virginia and we can get them out to the members of this committee and task force and to, you know, the TDLCB, and we can share it as much as we possibly can.
That would be very helpful for the riders, the board members, and also for you and Transdev. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we could come up with like a seat drop or something in the vehicles too, so that we can, you know, hang in the vehicles so that people will know that as of June 1, Transdev is going to be taking on and providing the services.
Putting something on the call hold line would be helpful since we're listening to that.
Sure.
So anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Cheryl, for that question. And I apologize for not recognizing you sooner. We do have one more question, Ms. Marilyn.
We've worked really hard with your help over the past 10 years to build good relationships between the disability community and Access Links and MetroPlan. But I got to tell you, when I go to a meeting and the riders who are not on this board know information that I don't know, that doesn't make us look very good. So please, let's keep our lines of communication open. We're here to work with you, to be advocates, but we can't do that if we don't know. And it's critical that we get out and talk to the disability community, because they're already putting up defenses. They're not going to do what MD could do and blah, blah, blah. And what about us? And the drivers are afraid they're not going to get a job. You've got a lot of apprehension out here. And as Cheryl said, many of us have been through these transitions, you know, years. We know what is coming up.
Point well taken.
Thank you, Mr. Hickman.
Sure, you said that before.
There's one more?
I was just gonna ask real quick, is the contract once executed something that's a matter of public record or could be
Oh, sure.
reviewed by members of this board in any way?
I'm sure it's a matter of public record. I have no doubt about that. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes that helps to explain things and understand and just see, what are the requirements they're being, held to? What are the expectations? Nothing says that better than the contract as a start point.
Could we get some type of an overview that you could provide for us on this board? That would seem reasonable to me.
Yeah, we could do that if that is your wish.
Ms. Whittington?
And Norm, for your report that you're going to give to the board at the LCB on May 10th, maybe you can expand
What did she say?
on that.
Okay.
I was, Marilyn, I'm saying that maybe Norm could expand on his report that he gives to the LCB on May 11th. I keep saying May 10th, but May 11th. He can expand on his CTC report to include those items that are in the new contract that are of concern. And hopefully that would be helpful.
That and even possibly a link to where we can just read it on our own time if need be, or anybody wants to.
Allow time to let it get executed prior.
Sure,
to
right, right, completely
I'm gonna go
understood.
back
after
and yes, it
execution.
needs to
Yeah.
be signed, sealed and delivered before yeah,
Right.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's in, by then, with the meeting being Thursday, hopefully everything will be okay, because a lot cannot happen because you don't have the signed contract, and because things can change between now and then, you just.
Well, it's
never
just
know.
like going through the selection process. There's a cone of silence and you can't say anything. And as you well know, and it makes it very hard because people do have questions. People know things are being considered and you just can't say anything because it could very well ruin that whole entire selection process and put it in jeopardy. So it's a balancing act, to say the least. So.
Well, thank you, Norm. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for receiving our comments and recommendations. All right, we are moving right along. Today we don't have any general information items. I will call your attention to the upcoming meetings noted on your agenda. Our Metro Plan Orlando Board meeting is Wednesday, May 10th at 9 a.m. Our Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board meeting is Thursday, May 11th at 10 a.m. Member comments. We are now at member comments, and are there any committee members who have any final comments for today's meeting? No comments? This is the second opportunity for public comments. Comments heard at this point in the meeting are more general in nature and similar to the first. Comments may be made in person or online by joining us via Zoom. Members of the public joining us virtually who wish to speak will use the raise hands feature on the Zoom screen. If attending by phone, you may press *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, a team member will unmute your microphone and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. Ms. Mary Ann, is there anyone online wishing to comment on the action items?
No, Madam Chair, we do not have anyone online wishing to comment at this time.
Thank you. Lisa, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in person?
Have not received any requests.
Were any submitted by email or phone?
None received, Madam Chair.
Well, we've reached the end of our lovely time together. Our next meeting is July 25th. It'll be held here at Metro Plan at 10 a.m. And if there's no other business for us today, we stand adjourned.
And Madam Chair, I want to just thank everyone for your patience today. Marilyn she's actually testing out some new equipment for us this morning. So if it sounds like I'm yelling, I was to make sure that she's able to use that equipment properly. So I just wanted to note that, and thank you all so much for your time today.